Okay, let's talk about discipline because that's
Sure.
something I really need to work on. And it sounds like it's something that you really had to develop. You had to develop structures for yourself. So how did you go about like figuring out what was best for you? And yeah, like how did you come up with your structure?
So my husband used to say in his class, so Mike used to say, if you write first thing in the morning, get your hour done before you go to work, you've built the pyramids that day. No matter what anybody else does, they can't take that away from you, right? No matter what else happens, if you have a crappy day at work, you own that, right? And then Anne Lamott, who writes a lot about writing creativity and spirituality, says, don't watch the 10 o'clock news. You're only going to hear about fires in places you're never going to go, right? Just take that hour from 10 to 11 and do your writing. So you kind of have to figure out, I had to figure out what will work for me. And again, back to the hot tracks thing, does the morning work for me? Does the afternoon work for me? But I want to get some kind of regularity because there's an idea that the muses show up when you show up on a regular basis. So if I show up at 6 o'clock in the morning, 4 days a week for my hour, I wake up in the morning with the ideas. It's there, right? Because the more you show up, the more the inspiration muses or the training that you're giving your soul basically to listen to what's coming through you and put it down, whether it's painting or writing or singing or whatever, that you give yourself that regularity. And sometimes it's all going to go to hell, right? I love this. I went to see Cynthia Ozick, who's a terrific fiction writer. And somebody asked her, what's more important? Does art interrupt love? Is it art? What's that phrase? I can't remember. But anyway, she said, art isn't the inspiration for life or vice versa. She said, life interrupts art. And we were all like, what? She said, yeah, life interrupts art. You're going along, you're writing your story, and you go in the kitchen and you don't know that the electricity has gone off and the freezer has defrosted and you slip and break your arm. Right. And so her point was, you can't let those obstacles stop you, that life is going to throw at you a million things that, your husband comes home and you're supposed to write and he goes, if we take these chairs over to this place to get them recovered right now, we'll get a discount. Right. And so what I have in my head, and this is a kind of accountability, if I'm in the process where I'm writing something and I'm doing my 4 hours a week, I do more now, but at the beginning, if I didn't get it that day because everything went to hell in a handbasket, I owe it to myself by Sunday night at 12 midnight. Like I owe it to myself. So I don't begin the week letting that go unless someone's died and there was a flood, or there was a flood, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we're talking within reason here.
Yeah.
But we're not using the excuse that we don't have the time, because anybody anywhere can make 4 hours a week to do their creativity. Now, I did that when I was painting. I would set aside 3 hours in my space because I needed consistent hours. And I would do that in 3-hour chunks and schedule it, write it on a napkin, Discipline, everybody says, oh, I'm artistic, I'm not disciplined. It's not about discipline, it's about regularity, right? Because the more you're regular, the more you can stand up on the pylons of your own creativity. It might not all work out. I'm sitting next to 3 of my giant paintings right here, that worked out. But, they didn't all work out. Some of them I painted over and painted something else on them, but over time, you'll get chops. That's really it. So it's about time in. Malcolm Gladwell says that thing about 10,000 hours. You don't really need 10,000 hours. You can have, you can get some chops after 20 hours. You can get some chops after 2 months.
Yeah.
You start to practice being in something over the course of 2 months. You'll start to see what it does for you. That's the other part of it. When you do your artistry and you feel calm and connected, and the rest of the world, you're not pissed at the rest of the world, right? You're not angry at your day job or your boss, or you're not grumpy. Oh, I gotta have to be here again. You're starting to find a calm because you're expressing what you're dying to express. So
Yeah.
you're right. It's in the doing, and it's
Mm.
the regularity of the doing.
I think that the problem, the struggle that I have sometimes with creativity and creative projects is that if I don't feel inspired in that moment, I feel like I shouldn't do it. But that's really hard when it comes to discipline, because you don't always want to sit down and write for an hour,
Yeah.
right? But
You know,
you you make it happen.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you a little sideline anecdote. So
Okay.
in my naked marriage book, we talk about having a naked date, right? So every Friday night we have a naked date. So we started out that we had to be in bed naked at 6 o'clock, right? Now, and the deal was it didn't have to lead to sex, but 99 times out of 100 it did. But, and that was just us. That's not necessarily every couple, but for us it did. Because we like being naked with each other, right? but but he fought me at the beginning. So I was like, okay, what I saw happening was exactly what you said, is that if we waited for inspiration to strike, and this is true in a marriage, everything in the world was going to pull us away. His mother's in the hospital. Something happened in the apartment. Somebody's got to run out here. Somebody's calling us over here. They need us over here. And that if we didn't set a regular time, it didn't mean we couldn't have other times that were just random or creative, inspiration moments of intimacy. But we needed that to be able to stand up against the pressures of life, or we wouldn't get regular intimacy, and we wanted it, right? Because it was pleasurable. So that means sometimes you show up on Friday night and you're not really in the mood. You've had a crappy week, everything went wrong. And because it's a coupleship, you can rely on the other person to carry you over the way, right? Like one of my counselors years ago, one of my coaches said to me, just like recognize that the marriage is also a third entity, him, you, and the marriage, and it needs nurturing. And you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to lay back into this for the sake of the marriage. And I always get carried over into pleasure, and I'm always grateful, right? I always have a great time, right? So sometimes it's me, kind of carrying, and sometimes it's him kind of carrying us into that zone. And that's what I think we want for our creativity. It's like, it's work, it's cold, it's the morning, we're tromping up the hill, we don't know if we're going to see the sunshine or not, but as we move we start to get a little warmer, and pretty soon the rays come over the hill, and pretty soon we start to feel the warmth of the sun. And that's what we're after, is because then after we do that a number of times, we know that that will happen. And so when we sit down and we're not inspired, we know that the pleasure of having done our work, of having been in our work, will come. And so we keep doing it, right? And some days you might have a shitty day with writing or whatever you're doing, and you're like, oh my God, this is not turning out. But I don't know about other people, but for me, even on those days, I'm so glad I'm in it, because I don't want to be in something else. I want to be in this, right? I want to be in this. I've tried my whole life to find my way to be in this. I'm not going to back away from it, right?
Yeah. And whatever it is that people are doing, it just has to mean that much to you. It just has to be something that is really that important to you. And that's why the whole, find your why, that Simon Sinek, I think his name is, talks about, why do you want to be an artist? Why is this so important to you?
Me in particular?
Yeah.
I don't, that's interesting. I talk about this a lot because I do a little sermonette before my yoga classes a lot of times. And it's the way I'm wired. Like I investigated being a doctor at one point. I trained in psychology. So, I investigated being a PhD psychologist. I'm a smart person. I could have done any of those things. I'm wired this way. The thing that's most important to me is to get my hands and heart in this and to share it. I don't know why. Why am I moved by color so much? Why am I moved by shape and clothing? Why am I moved? I mean, we have art covering our walls from floor to ceiling. We collect little pieces of street art and little pieces of, studio art wherever we go. And oh my God, how are we going to fit it in? We've got so much on the walls, but we love it, right? It's a thing that, it's the thing that enlivens me most. If I think, how do the pleasures of life come to me? Intimacy with my husband, absolutely first on the list. Artistry, color, light, beauty, form, shape, movement, music, then food, right? Food, I love to cook, right?
Mhm.
So you think, okay, that's what's most important to me. For some people, it will be in the service of healing people and being a doctor. And that is their highest calling. For some people, it's, taking somebody's project and marketing it and taking it out in the world, and they love it. I remember when I was fundraising, I did that for years. I was a grant writer. And this guy that I met at one of these Stanford events said that he was a printer and he couldn't wait to retire because he was dying to be a fundraiser. He wanted to be a fundraiser all his life. And I was like, gong, 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 get me out of here as soon as I can. But this guy thought that would be the be all end all job. Right. And so finding your why is really about mining. Carolyn Mace says this beautiful thing. We often just don't pull up a chair in our heart and ask ourselves what moves us, like what's going on in there, right? And so I guess the way I knew was because I was unhappy doing other things. I was just unhappy.